village, people gathered every market day to sell yams, palm oil, and cloth. Among them sat a ragged man with torn clothes and a calabash for begging. His hair was unkempt, and flies danced around him as he stretched his hands for food. The villagers called him the useless one and often pushed him aside when he blocked the road. Little did they know that the man who appeared hungry and broken was once Okonkwo the Fearless, the greatest hunter in all the lands. Years ago, his arrows never missed, and his name alone sent wild beasts fleeing into the forest. But now, covered in dust and silence, no one recognized him. The people of Odiu loved to boast. Their men bragged of strength, their women boasted mockery. They poured leftover food into his calabash. Even dogs eat better than you. As a hawk, he had returned in disguise, not because he was weak, but because the spirits had told him to test the hearts of his people. What he saw was pride without compassion, wealth without kindness. One moonless night, a cry shattered the peace of Odiu. A terrible beast, half lion and half serpent, slithered out of the dark forest. Its roar shook huts, and its scales glittered like fire. It destroyed farms, and left footprints that burned the earth. Panic swept through the village. The chiefs called for warriors to defend the land, but fear grew every man. Spears trembled in their hands, and even the biggest hunters hid the village. People gathered every market day to sell yams, palm oil, and cloth. Among them sat a ragged man with torn clothes and a calabash for begging. His hair was unkempt, and flies danced around him as he stretched his hands for food. The villagers called him the useless one and often pushed him aside when he blocked. Little did they know that the man who appeared hungry and broken was in all the lands. Years ago, his arrows never missed. But now, covered in dust and silence, no one recognized him. The people of Odiu, their men bragged of strength, and even the children laughed at strangers. The beggar 31. Even dogs eat better than you. Watching them with eyes as sharp as a hawk, he had returned in disguise, not because he was weak, but because the spirits had told him to test the hearts of his people. Passion, wealth without kindness. One moonless night, peace of Odiu. A terrible beast. Forest. Its roar shook huts, and its scales farms, devoured goats, and left footprints that swept through the village. The chiefs called for war. Trembled in their hands, and even the strongest hunters hid. Cried, but no answer came. And in the shadow, the beggar rose from his corner and walked to the The people laughed. Even the useless one won. But instead of begging, he asked for a bow and arrows. With nothing left to lose, they handed him an old weapon. Eyes shone with the fire of old. Standing tall stood the fearless hunter of legend. For the first time in years, the Quo faced the beast at the edge of the forest. Its fiery scales, the second he struck its heart. Thunderous cry. The land was saved, and when the people bowed before him, Okonkwo spoke. You mocked the poor and despised the weak. Remember, a man's worth is not in his clothes. For you do not know who sits among you. Learned humility, and the beggar who was a hunter became a legend forever. For 3 long years, the land of Israel had been dry and barren. Rivers turned into cracked soil, and crops. People grew desperate, and many turned to the false god Baal. The prophet Elijah knew that only the Lord had the power to give life to the earth. King Ahab, who ruled the land, with his queen Jezebel encouraging the worship of Baal, the people's hearts faith, waiting for the moment when God told Elijah to meet King Ahab without fear of the angry king. Ahab's eyes blazed on Israel, but Elijah boldly declared, "It is not I who have troubled Israel, but you and your father's house, for you have forsaken and followed Baal." Elijah then issued a challenge to gather all the prophets of Baal, people of Israel, and meet him on Mount Carmel. There, the true God would reveal himself for all to see. On Mount Carmel, one for the prophets of Baal and one for Elijah, the prophet of the Lord. Elijah, if the Lord is God, follow him. The people stood silent, waiting, and placed their sacrifice on it. From and cried out, "Baal, answer us." But no voice came. Grew frantic, even cutting themselves with knives. At last, Elijah stepped forward. He repaired the altar of the Lord with 12 stones. Sacrifice on it, and to make it even harder, ran down and filled a trench around it. The people watched in amazement. What, O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, God in Israel. At that moment, heaven with a mighty roar. It consumed the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the soil, and even the water in the trench. The people fell on their faces, crying, The Lord, He is God." After the prophets of Baal were and told him to prepare for heavy Carmel, bowed down and prayed earnestly. At first, his servant saw nothing in the sky, but on the seventh time, he reported a small cloud rising from the sea. Soon the heavens grew dark, and a mighty rain poured down upon the land, breaking the drought at last. Israel had seen the power of the Lord, and Elijah's faith had triumphed. It was a moment that would be remembered for generations, when fire fell from heaven, and the hearts of the people were turned back to God.
Long ago, the village of Orim was struck by a terrible drought. The rivers dried up, the ground cracked, and the people grew weak from hunger. Day after day, they looked to the sky, but the clouds would not gather, and the sun burned hotter with every passing season. The children cried, and the old ones whispered, "Surely the gods have forgotten us." At last, the gods showed mercy. They sent down a magical drum to the village chief, a drum that could summon rain whenever it was beaten. The people rejoiced when the first drops fell, filling their jars and bringing life back to the thirsty earth. The drum was a gift of hope, but the God, this drum belongs to the people. It must be used with clever mind and greedy heart. He watched with envy. I would be the richest in the world. One evening, when the chief's children tricks, while they laughed, he slipped inside. Quiet By the time the children noticed, Tortoise was gone. Hidden deep in the forest, Tortoise beat the drum. The clouds gathered. His crops grew tall and green, while the rest of the village still suffered under the overflowed, and the rain, boasting to the birds and the trees. Yet, and the thunder growled with anger, still, Tortoise would. His magic turned against him. Instead of gentle rain, a terrible storm fell upon his home. Lightning split the trees, floods swallowed his boat as he tried to hide under his shell. Oh, what the forest ran to the chief. Together they followed the sound of thunder until they soaked and trembling beside the broken drum. His greed had brought destruction not only upon himself, but all the land. The gods appeared in the storm and took back the drum, placing it once more in the care of the chief. With wise hands, the chief beat it, and this time the rain fell gently, soaking the fields and filling the streams. The people rejoiced, lifting their faces to the sky, giving thanks. As for Tortoise, he was left humbled and ashamed. His shell remained cracked from the storm, and a mark of his greed.
After the storm destroyed his home, Tortoise wandered far from the village, his cracked shell a reminder of his greed. He was mocked by the animals and shunned by the villagers. Each night, he lay under the stars, wondering if the gods would ever forgive him. One evening, by the riverbank, Tortoise met a wandering old man with eyes as bright as fireflies. The man said, "The gods punish greed, but they also forgive those who change." Tortoise bowed his head and whispered, "But how can I ever be forgiven?" The old man pointed to the horizon where the mountains touched the sky. "Seek the mountain of clouds. There lies a secret greater than the drum." With nothing left to lose, Tortoise set out on a long journey. He crossed burning plains, dark forests, and rivers that nearly swept him away. His shell, though cracked, shielded him from danger. At last, after many days, he stood before the mountain of clouds, where thunder rolled endlessly across the peaks. At the mountain's summit, Tortoise discovered a glowing cave filled with mist. Inside, a great stone pulsed like a voice rumbled from the stone. "Tortoise, you sought power, but what you need is wisdom." Terrified, Tortoise bowed low. "Teach me, O stone, for I am foolish." The voice replied, "Carry me within your shell. Shall guide you to truth. But remember, wisdom is not for pride, it is for service." Tortoise returned from the mountain with the glowing stone hidden in his shell. Along the way, his net. Once, he would have ignored it, but now he stopped and freed the bird. Further down the road, he met a starving child who cried for food. Instead of keeping his last yam, Tortoise shared it. With each act of kindness, the stone inside him glowed brighter. And for the first time in his life, Tortoise felt peace instead of greed. When Tortoise finally returned to Orim, the people were afraid. But the chief saw the gentle light shining from his cracked shell. The gods appeared once more in a soft rain and spoke, "Tortoise has learned his lesson. Though his shell will always bear the cracks of his past, his heart now carries wisdom." From that day, Tortoise was no longer mocked. Children gathered to hear him tell stories of greed and wisdom, and the people listened to his counsel. And so, the tale of Tortoise and the magic rain drum became not only a warning against greed, but also a promise of redemption. It started with a single bite. A strange sickness crept through the veins of a boy in the school laboratory, turning his body cold and his mind into hunger. Within moments, he was no longer human. His scream became the first echo of the apocalypse. The infection spread faster for him. Rooms that once held laughter. Teachers fell, students turned. School shook with terror. Only the beginning. The school went into emergency lockdown. Metal shutters sealed the doors, trapping hundreds inside. Instead of safety, the building became a of death. Every hallway locked exits, crying for their parents, but only silence answered. The military had sealed them off, not to protect them, but to contain the plague. The corridors became rivers of fear. Students sprinted past lockers, tripping over backpacks left behind in panic. Groans of the infected echoed like a nightmare. Themselves with desks, but the pounding on the door never stopped. With each thud, hope drained. Would not hold forever. The cruelest of the infection was not the monsters. It was watching friends turn into them. One bite was enough. A girl hugged her wounded friend, promising he'd be fine. Sank into her neck. Survival meant abandoning those you loved. Tears and loyalty meant nothing anymore. In this new world, trust was a death sentence. Clawed their way to the roof. From there, the city outside glowed with fire, but no help came. Helicopters circled, watching but never landing. The rooftop. They built fires to signal, but the army only responded with silence. It wasn't rescue. It was surveillance. As the sun set, fear deepened. The infected did not rest. Their growls shifted across the stairwells. Every creak of the building sounded like death climbing closer. The survivors huddled together under blankets, whispering. Silence, hunger, and the knowledge that morning might never come. At midnight, the fire doors finally gave way with unnatural speed. Screams split the night, followed by the wet sound of tearing flesh. The rooftop. Survivors fought with pipes. Blood sprayed across the walls, but no matter how many fell, more came. The old sewer tunnel beneath the gym. They broke through the floorboards and descended into the darkness, hoping the dead would not follow. The tunnel smelled of rot and echoed with dripping water. But as they moved deeper, whispers carried through the dark. Low, hungry and human. The dead were already there, waiting. Above ground, the military prepared their final solution. Tanks rolled into position, and jets circled overhead. The order was simple: erase zone. Flames rained down on the school, consuming it in a storm of fire. The soldiers did not see faces. They saw only numbers on a map. For them, this was not murder, it was cleansing. When dawn arrived, the school reporting no survivors. The city moved on. Hands twitched. Eyes opened. The groans began again. Death had not ended the story, it had only spread it. And in the end, the title was true. All of us are dead. In the bustling heart of Odu village, people gathered every market day to sell yams, palm oil, and cloth. Among them sat a ragged man with torn clothes and a calabash for begging. His hair was... The villagers called him the useless one and often The man who appeared hungry and broken was once Okonkwo the Fearless, the greatest hunter in all the lands. Years ago, his arrows never missed, and his name alone sent wild beasts fleeing into the forest. But now, covered in dust and silence, no one recognized him. The people of Odu loved to boast. Their men bragged of strength, their women boasted of beauty, and even the children laughed at strangers. The beggar became their favorite mockery. They poured leftover food into his one. Even dogs eat better than you. Not because he was weak, but because the spirit hearts of his people. What he saw was pride without compassion, kindness. One moonless night, a cry shook. A terrible beast, half lion and half serpent, dark forest. Its roar shook huts. Hills glittered like fire. It destroyed farms and left footprints that burned the earth. Panic swept through the village. The chiefs called for warriors to defend the land. Fear gripped every man. Spears trailed hands, and even the strongest hunters hid behind their weapons. Who will save us? They cried, but no one. The beggar listened. At dawn, the beggar rose from it. They mocked. But instead of begging, he asked for an old weapon. When Okonkwo touched the bow, the people gasped. It shone with the fire of old. Standing tall stood the fearless hunter of legend. For the first time in truly was. With a steady hand, Okonkwo faced the beast. Fiery scales. The second he struck its heart. Third, the monster fell with a thunderous cry. And silence covered the village like a blanket. When the people the weak. Remember, a man's worth is not in his clothes, but in his spirit. Treat every stranger with kindness, for you do not know who sits among you. From that day, Odu learned humility.